moved here in the winter, everything was dry and brown. Never saw the place in summer, no idea what's in the ground. Bearing dogwood in the front yard, I wasn't sure if it was gone. Then about the 1st of April, I saw what was going on. Coming alive again, coming alive, coming alive again, coming alive. If I really love somebody, they used to say that we were close. It's kinda strange to show compassion through this distance that we chose. But we hid out in our houses till the medicine arrived. Now the buds have turned to blossom, step into the other side. Coming alive again, coming alive, coming alive again, coming alive. It's been a long and lonely winter. It's been a long and lonely year. It's gonna take a while to understand, but some things are coming clear. In the distant days of childhood, there was a story that I heard about how dying's part of living, but it's not the final word. So the leaves that fell in autumn turn to flowers in the spring, and the sorrow of our losses turns to songs that we can sing. Coming alive again, coming alive, coming alive again, coming alive, coming alive again, coming alive.
Hey Jubilee friends, I am really sad to not be with you this morning. Would love to have shared some hugs and such, but I'm grateful for this technology that allows me to send a few ideas just the 20 miles down the road that separate us. COVID had other plans than I did for my weekend, and I deeply regret that. But thank you for being interested. Thank you for the invitation. And I'll share a few thoughts here on this highest of holy days in the Christian faith on Easter. I was asked to speak about cultivating change through rebirth. Cultivating change through rebirth. Well, I'd say that rebirth is the highest form of change, right? So that's not hard to draw a line between these two things. When I think about rebirth and transformation, I always think about my friend Scott Shepard. He was living in northern Alabama. As a young man, he grew up in a small town in northern Alabama, just south of Memphis. And he was kind of scrawny. He wasn't athletic. He wasn't an academic standout in his school. He got picked on a lot. He got beat up a lot. Had a really toxic home life. And so Scott kind of just tried to keep his head down through most of his youth. And in high school, he met some guys. And these guys said, "Hey, there's one good thing about you that we like a lot." Really? Nobody ever told him that there was anything good about him. And they said, "If you don't want to get beat up anymore, we'll look out for you. Come join us." So Scott went to a few meetings with these guys, and because he found a sense of belonging in this group that he had never encountered before, he became heavily involved with the KKK. Now, I'm not justifying his actions, and he won't justify them either. He doesn't ask for forgiveness, but he spent quite a few years in the Ku Klux Klan and actually became a grand wizard. If you're curious, you can look up on YouTube an old interview he did with Sally Jesse Raphael speaking for the Klan. So Scott lived that life for quite a few years. One night, he was in Memphis, he was having some dinner, and he drank too much, as he often did in those days, and as he left, he got pulled over, and it was a sea of blue lights because they were keeping an eye on Scott, right? So when they pulled him over, they found that he was not only drunk, but he also had an unregistered gun underneath the seat. And those two things in combination meant that he was up against some real hard time, several years in prison. His lawyer said, there's no way you're not going to be convicted for this. So the best thing we can do is try to mitigate your sentencing, try to just reduce your sentencing through any means we can. So he said, here's the best thing I know for you to do. Check yourself in to voluntary rehab after you're convicted, but before you're sentenced, and spend a month in rehab. And you can take it as seriously or as not seriously as you want. And when you come out, you can present that to the judge. We can present that to the judge. And the judge hopefully will mitigate your sentence because you're taking steps to turn your life around. Well, he decided that sounded like a pretty good scam, and he could do that for a month and then get out and go back to his old life. So that's what he did, checked himself into a month-long voluntary rehab. And that experience was not what he expected it to be. What happened was that he got sober, for one, and that's a pretty big transformation in and of itself. But he also went through the program with a small cohort of guys, including 2 black men, whose stories reminded him quite a lot of his own. And he grew to know them, and he grew to love them, and the cognitive dissonance was too much. He could no longer go back to his KKK life. So he got out and he quit, and he got a lot of death threats, but they didn't kill him. He still gets them from time to this day. Scott now spends his time doing anti-racism workshops in churches, especially in the rural South near where he lives, to try to save kids from getting involved in stuff like this and show them a better way. And I love this man, in spite of all that he's done, and because of his remarkable transformation. So here we are at Easter, which is also a story of transformation. I heard a Presbyterian preacher shock an auditorium full of people many years ago by saying that he thought the cross was actually a pretty terrible symbol for Christianity, that a much better one would be a butterfly, because butterflies are understood universally to represent transformation. And the cross focuses on Jesus' death rather than his resurrection. It focuses on that moment of murder and not on all of the years of love. Those 3 years of his ministry, he spoke almost constantly about how we go about loving each other, often in very tangible ways. He spoke far more about financial justice than any other topic, by far. According to Jim Wallace, about 80% of what he said was about taking care of the poor. That's not so much what I hear these days from Christians around the world, but it is the heart of gospel according to that guy. Go figure. That made sense to me, this butterfly image, this transformative image, and it lines up with what I've observed in my life, which is that love is the most transformational force in the universe, and it is ubiquitous. It is everywhere. But the thing about butterflies is that in order to transform, they have to melt all the way down into goo. There is no spine, there is no antenna that maintains a little thread of identity to become a new antenna or even to become a wing. It's just a complete messy goo in that moment in the middle where it has been deconstructed entirely. So there is form, and then it is deformed, and then it is transformed and reformed, and there's form again. Somehow that feels like a very powerful metaphor for what I see happening in the world. when people are transformed for the better. But that makes it pretty scary to ask for transformation in your life, because it does mean that all of what you have trusted and treasured may fall away entirely. According to the story, Jesus of Nazareth, at the end of his 3-year ministry, was killed by the state after a legally sanctioned sham trial. And 3 days later, he rose again from the dead, and then he spent about 40 more days with his people. And I think many Christians, perhaps most Christians, focus on the miracle of that rebirth, that makes sense when you read that story, right? And they think of it as a unique instance in time and space where a person who is dead lives again. Of course, there's one other story in the Bible about that as well. But my point is not to point out that there are other instances of that, but rather to say that the breaking of the laws of physics is not, for me, what constitutes a miracle. I think that's how most of us think of a miracle, something that can't possibly happen, that just happened. It can't happen by the laws of physics, and there it did. It's something that's very unusual, and when we notice it, it shows us something about life and God and whatever. That's not really how I think of it, because, well, Albert Einstein is credited with having said that there are 2 reasonable ways to look at the world. 1, that there are no miracles, and 2, that everything is a miracle. I tend to fall into the latter camp. When we look closely enough at anything at all, it's miraculous. My hand and that guitar over there and this piece of paper here and this iPhone and these glasses and this shirt are all made up mostly of hydrogen. It's the most common atom in the universe, and it has 1 proton and it has 1 electron. The electron whirls around to form kind of a sphere around the proton. And then that atom is next to another atom, and they form molecules, and they build up into all these things, right? Here's how much of a hydrogen atom is empty space. I'm going to read it carefully. 99.999999999996% empty space, right? So if the whole Earth were a hydrogen atom, the proton in the middle of that atom would be about the size of 2 football fields. Imagine that down in the center of the Earth and all the rest of it empty space. And that's what we're made of. And yet we're having this conversation right now. And yet love. And yet life and death, right? How does any of that make sense? So to me, it is the everyday miracles that blow my mind. That story of his death and resurrection, it's not that it matters because it was an exception to the rules. It matters because it is emblematic of how life works. Not only does all life lead to death, we know this, but all death leads back to life. That's not some woo-woo Pollyanna perspective on the world. It is observably scientifically true, right? Compost is the fundamental miracle of the universe. Love and compost. I don't know for sure what happened 2,000 years ago in the Middle East, but I believe in the miracle that you and I, who are utterly insignificant in the vast expanse of history, are loved. Are loved by God or Spirit or whatever word you want to use. I think the Apostle John got it right when he said God is love, and love is what transforms us. Well, love and compost. So compost is the process by which last year's vegetables and rubbish and waste get transformed into nutrients for next year's broccoli and forsythia and on and on and on, pine trees, right? Those nutrients become those things, right? So last year's old waste is now something beautiful. Friends, this community has been through a season of loss. I've had the holy opportunity to walk with you through some of that. The nation is certainly experiencing a great deal of loss right now. More and more people are becoming aware of that. And in your own individual lives, I know there's been loss that I can't imagine. This is part of being alive, and it's not fun, being dissolved into goo. But my wish for you, my prayer for you, my hope for you, is that this time will be one of reforming and transforming. For you individually, for Jubilee, for the nation, and for the world. It's not an easy process, but I believe that love can transform us all and grow something beautiful from the compost. Blessings of Easter, friends, and may love transform us all.